talk about what performing at the Olympics meant to you and how you look back at that experience?
What it meant, that's the... Must be like Edmund Hillary felt when he finally got to the top of Everest, something like that.
Well, what did it mean to you personally as a, kind of a validation of your contribution to British music?
Exactly that, yes.
Yeah.
The validation, yes. It was marvelous, and it really brought out the best in the whole nation, really. So we really wanted to do a good job. And British people are incredibly talented when they want to be. But, they kind of get miserable and moody. I think a lot to do with the weather, because it rains all the time. Absolutely a right choice was Danny Boyle as director, because he's such a talented genius, really, and such a nice person to work for. He kind of makes you feel confident. He makes you feel good about yourself and about what you do, and people wanted to give him their best, and it was seeing my old country at its best, and the whole city, of course, was alive, whole of London. It was summer, and it had been cold and rainy for weeks before, and then the sun came out, and people were on the streets, in these street fairs, and I don't know if you were there, but it was great. A big sense of excitement, and then we were all worried that it was going to rain on the night, so we were watching the weather, and there was a few clouds about, but it didn't. Well, actually, there was a few spots just during the show, and it was also great because I had my son on stage with me, Luke. He's also a musician, and I think people were so skeptical or expecting a disaster, and instead they got a global triumph. So how could I not be, elated to be part of that?
Now, after the Olympic ceremony, you could have put out practically anything and received a lot of exposure. What made you want the next album to be a remix project?
Oh, that was started years before. It wasn't like because of the Olympics. There was nothing to do with it. That was because this German DJ called Thorsten Stenzel, he lives on a few islands down from me in Antigua. And I had signed a new publishing deal, and one of the executives there put me in contact with this guy. He said, well, he's over your side of the pond, the Atlantic. You should meet up. And he came over. And it was his idea to do a remix, and I thought, well, because I was doing 5.1 remixes of all my old albums at the time, and I had the multi-tracks, they'd been dug out of these old libraries, and the original Ampex tapes. Some of them had to be baked in an oven because they were in such bad condition. It was, over 30 or 40 years old, can't believe it, and transferred to digital. And I said, well, why don't we work together on it? Over the internet. We don't have to be in the same studio, and we can use some samples from the original albums. And I thought that was a cool project because I love technology. I love software. At the moment, I'm working completely without any software, but for that project, and there's all these super wonderful plugins and VST instruments, software, amazing things. You just hold one note down and it goes squeeze bang, arpeggiators, all kind of things. Must be armies of people throughout the world designing these incredible things. And he introduced me to all kinds of specialist ones that DJs use, remixers use, things I'd never have come across. So it was good, and we'd send files backwards and forwards over the internet. I'd do a bit of work on it, send it back, and he'd do a bit of work on it. In the end, he took over most of the work because I was writing some new material and finishing off remixes. So it's more of Thorsten's album, and it was finished long before the Olympics. It was nothing to do with capitalizing on that.
Well, how important is it to you to ensure that your music reaches younger listeners in this way?
I don't think like that.
Oh.
I just, I love music, and somebody wants to do a version. You should look at my Facebook.
I do.
Which one? Have you got the right one?
No, I have the Gord Mike Field one. That seems very official.
Oh, yeah. That's my one. Yeah. Just started that. You can see all the different versions people do. It's
right.
I don't mind. Some of them are great, and some of them not so great. But it doesn't bother me. I'm not precious. I don't mind at all. So, of course, it's great. I think because this music is, it started off, and it still is, just the love of music, and I just was born with this musical ability and vision. I don't sit and analyze. I don't think about it much. Just do it. And if people want to make different versions, then great. I have no idea about other artists or genres or all this stuff that music journalists talk about. I haven't got a clue. There's all these artists around now I never even heard of, and I don't even know what they do. But,
well, now you mentioned that you are taking apart and revisiting your classic back catalog. Tell me about.
It's fascinating. You get the multi-tracks, and it's almost like yesterday when I'm listening to them. You can hear. I remember every single second of all of them, really. And I'm just doing 5 Miles Out now, which is great. There's actually one track called 5 Miles Out. I've forgotten how many versions I did of it. I've got about 4 different versions. I couldn't get it right, and spent more than 3 months on that one track until finally it started coming together. Funny enough, I was very akin to watching a Hitchcock movie about Psycho. I didn't realize that it was only really made to succeed, that movie, in the editing. When they first played the first edit, rough cut, everybody hated it and thought it was a disaster. And I don't know, have you seen the Hitchcock movie, the latest one?
Yeah, I have. Oh,
yeah, it was fantastic that it came together in the edit. It was similar listening to my old music. A lot of it came together after a lot of editing and cutting and paste. Well, you had to physically cut the tape in those days and stick it together with sticky tape, same as the old way you used to work on films.
Well, tell me about your philosophy about remixing and revisiting these albums.
Oh, I don't have a philosophy. It's fun, I kind of semi-retired now, and what should I do? People, the record company, they wanted to release all my catalog, not all at once, but one a year. It's a lovely way of revisiting your old work. I do have some new ideas, but I don't have anything like the drive or the need to work like I do. I probably work a couple of hours a day now, whereas 30 years ago it would be 15 hours a day, something like that. I was obsessed. I don't have a philosophy about it. It's just engaging. It keeps me busy. I like doing it.
Well, what about memories? I mean, over on your Facebook page, you mentioned you were overcome by emotion, when you heard Pierre Morlin and Maurice Pert's work again. How do you look back at their contributions?
Well, it's easy to kind of take things for granted, don't you? When there's people gone from the world, especially, you see, because I'm not just listening to the finished thing. I can zoom in on the bass drum, the snare drum. I can hear them. It's like they're there in the room with me. I'm not listening to a part of a mix. And I can remember the occasion, I remember pressing the record button and starting to play together, like that. And I've noticed, especially Maurice Pert, what a wonderful drummer he was in terms of feel. And every strike of the drums or cymbals had this kind of intensity to it, which I probably didn't fully appreciate at the time. It's only now I can really appreciate it.
Well, we obviously lost Kevin Ayers a few days ago, and I'm curious about your thoughts about him as a presence and personality in your life.
Kevin was very much part of my early life, my teenagerhood, because I joined his band when I was only 16, and I suppose he was the first really charismatic person that I ever met. Up until that time, I'd been at school and trying to get out of school, and I'd only played at little folk clubs and a few kind of colleges around. And there was this, tall guy, with tremendous charisma who'd been just come off tour with Jimi Hendrix, and I was quite awestruck by him, and also his attitude to life, very. There probably is a word to describe it, but not being very good with words, I can't think of it. There's relaxed attitude, Mediterranean attitude. It's like enjoy life, take it easy. Don't take things too seriously. And unfortunately, his attitude was not really suited to being tremendously successful in the music business, because you do need drive, and you need a lot of savvy street wisdom, street smartness to be a success in the music business. There's so many people who either take advantage of you or don't listen to you because you didn't sell enough the last time, or I was just very lucky to bump into Virgin at the time I did. But he was basically a lovely character, very kind, and kind of took me under his wing a little bit. Not so much musically, but in terms of life and attitude to life.
Now, I want to ask you about one more person that passed away a little while ago, and that's Pekka Pohjola, who I'm a huge fan of, and he was such an intriguing rhythmic anchor on several of your tours. How do you look back at him?
To be honest, what I can remember most is my first meeting, which was at the Manor Studios. He bought me a bottle of vodka and this strange black bread from Finland. And he was quite a very large man, very Nordic, and played the bass amazingly. But if I can be honest, I wasn't very personally friendly with him. I mean, he was a very kind of aloof kind of person. I know he came on that first tour, but that was the only tour he did. There was about 80 people on that tour. And we did do a little bit of work together. That turned out as a nice track. There was a couple I played on, I remember. But he was very kind of solid Nordic, person. A very, very good bass player. But I didn't have that much personal contact with him.
Okay, well, we were talking about 5 Miles Out in Crises, and reading Changeling, looking at some of your other interviews, you've spoken about the pressure you felt in terms of needing to write pop songs, but the fact of the matter is that some of the songs are remarkable in construction and ingenuity. So clearly, you felt there was something of value in the pop and rock song format. Can you talk to me about creating pop music and yet making it really incredibly interesting?
Well, to me, it's just all music. There's no difference. You can even hear music that's not music. Like lapping of waves or howling of winds, or particularly living here, hurricanes now and then. We just had Sandy pass through a few months ago, and before that there was Irene. They make amazing noises. It's all music to me. And so I don't categorize things like I said before, and I don't philosophize. It's just vibrations in the air, and they have this tremendous effect on you in a very non-verbal way. I had a lot of trouble writing lyrics. I used to cheat a lot, really, using things like thesaurus and rhyming dictionary. But I bumped into Tim Rice many years ago, and asked him if he did that, and he confided in me like it was a big secret. He said, "Yeah, yes, I do." And I think we all do. We'll use all those props.
Well, do you look back at those albums and go, wow, I really got away with some incredibly expansive pop songs back then?
No.
No? Okay. Because they're very unique. They're incredibly unique.
Just sound. Oh, thank you for saying so. I think 5 Miles Out, this song, I'm working on well, I'm just finishing off, I've just finished off Mount Tady, which I did with Carl Palmer. It's a beautiful thing. I kind of underestimated his drumming abilities on that, because there's lots of outtakes of his drumming that didn't get used in the final track. He's an excellent drummer, but mind you, I've worked with some of the best, from everybody from Robert Wyatt. I was the bass player to his drums for about a year, and he was amazing. And then, of course, there's Simon Phillips, the human octopus, the drum kit is unbelievable. But Carl Palmer is great, Mount Tady is great, 5 Miles Out is an extraordinary constructed piece of music. It's almost like a little operetta. And especially if you listen to the other versions, which I'm going to choose one extra one, I think, and put them on the re-release so that people get an idea of all the work that went into getting the final one.
Well, I have a personal theory about your albums. I've listened to all of them, by the way, across the decades, and my theory is that
it took you quite a while, I would think. I think I worked out it was about 36 hours of music that had been released.
Believe it or not, I know every note. So my theory is that this music doesn't only reflect your personal and label circumstances, but the global situation during the time that they're making the world as it's unfolding. And I haven't heard you talk about that. I'm wondering if there's any truth in that.
Not really, no.
No?
See, in those days, I was very much... Well, my routine would be from the first tour onwards, the one I mentioned with the 80 people. I came straight back into the studio and thought, what do I do now? I remember, what did I do? I thought, well, okay, I'm going to try something completely different. So I went to New York and hired some session men and ended up with an album, what was it called now? Platinum. And then I did a tour. I came back off a tour, went back in the studio. I thought, I worked with David Henschel. I think it was the record company who did that. And that about 20 years or more than that. That was my life. So I was obviously I would, it was album tour, and then hundreds of interviews, and God knows how much traveling. All the way around Europe. About 100 times, and. I think in the end, I felt like I lived at Frankfurt Airport, because Frankfurt Airport was that big hub to get anywhere in Europe. I remember visiting Copenhagen umpteen times. So I wasn't really aware. Obviously, I would watch the news and read the papers, and I do remember world events, but I'm not political at all. I'm not, I was a musician, working musician, so I wasn't really aware of what was happening in the world. I wasn't involved. Sorry, I was aware but not involved, not emotionally or politically, anything like that.
Interesting. Well, I mean, you were one of the first Western musicians that incorporated African music and mixed it with Celtic music. Amongst other things. As early as Ommadawn, really, and
that's right.
In a way, you're a world music pioneer, uncredited in some ways. Can you tell me about your original interest in mixing these world cultures?
Yeah, I was in a record store somewhere in England. Probably they used to have record stores. I'm telling myself now. I lived in LA for a while, and I remember Tower Records. We used to go in there a lot. But long before that, in little town where I grew up, Reading, there was a little record store, and you kind of leaf through. I think they had this little section. There was a record library. You could go to the library and take LPs, we used to call them out. And I found a couple of African music. I have no idea what what they were, but some of them were these obscure instruments made out of huge vegetable things with strings stuck on them, and I was fascinated by it, and especially the vocals, the tribal vocals. And then I loved the sound of the drums, the tribal drumming. Always loved that. And so I wasn't thinking of anything other than I like that, and I want to use that on my track. It was. I didn't set out to do anything particular, just to like sounds. It's like with Tuba de Bells, the original demos was this set of baby toy bells that were used on the demos, from a baby's crib. It's just anything that made a nice sound. I even used the Hoover on one track, because I like the sound of, turn on the vacuum cleaner, and I like the sound of the engine. It seemed to be harmonic to me, and I used that on one track.
Did it ever strike you that it was actually kind of revolutionary to mix African and Celtic music?
No.
No? Because it had never been done before.
I never think about it. Just not even the slightest thought.
It's all music.
It's just sound waves.
Well, some of the more intriguing sound waves you created, I feel, are on your album Amarok, and I haven't really heard you speak a lot about it. And
I love that one.
Essentially, it was an intended sequel to Ommadawn, is that correct?
Kind of, yeah. When I started it off, I got to start somewhere. So there was tremendous pressure on me at the time from Richard Branson especially to make Tuba de Bells 2. Because I remember I was playing squash with Richard's partner, Simon Draper. And after the game, I was just having orange juice, and I said, I was thinking of making a sequel, and his ears pricked up. What, Tuba de Bells? Yeah, obviously, and it was just a thought in my mind. As soon as I said that to him, there was pressure on me to do it. But by then, my relationship with a record company got pretty low, really. They didn't take much interest in me. They put my albums out, but they were much more into people like Sex Pistols, and then after that there was Boy George, and then after that Phil Collins, and I was really put very much on the back burner. And also, I was my contract. I was at a stupid, miserable royalty level, and I couldn't change it. And I was committed to do what turned out to be 13 albums. And so by that time, I was only a few albums away. And I didn't have a manager, and so I kind of thought in a business fashion, which I learned to do, had to do. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a penny. I mean, sucked dry by all the, sycophants, the sharks out there. Everybody tries to get as much as they can. And then I thought, well, if I just get to the end of my contract, then I'll do Tuba de Bells too. But when I was doing at that time, I thought, well, I could do Ommadawn too. So I started off, well, okay, I'm going to have some barons, and I'm going to have Clodagh Simmons, the singer on Ommadawn, one of the singers, and Bridget St. John as well. And then I decided I wasn't even going to compose it. It was going to be a complete improvisation, the whole album. So I'd get in the studio every morning with Tom Newman, and the first thing that came into my head was the first thing that got recorded, and I think it started out just with a baron rhythm, that thing at the beginning, and then melody came, and I put the melody in, Clodagh came and sang it, and then thought, well, let's make it into a round, so it just grew like that. And then I had some crazy ideas. Oh yeah, it was going along with this beautiful Celtic thing, and I got a bit bored with it, and I thought, let's put some outrageous discordant stabs on it, So we put these amazing, I thought that kind of livened it up a bit. It was all improvisation, and then I thought it'd be nice to have some footsteps on one bit, and then I thought, well, what about brushing my teeth on this bit? And then I was into making model airplanes, helicopters at the time, and I thought, well, all these little tools, they all make sound. So we had the Aero Modeller's toolkit. And then I had the drummers from Ommadawn, the Jabula, they were South Africans. They were all ANC before the end of apartheid, and they came en masse to the studio. And then I got the whole choir, so I had 100 of them in a big studio in London. And Margaret Thatcher was being deposed, so we got this impersonator, and it was just fun. And that is the one album I'm looking forward to so much, to do mixing in 5.1.
I personally own about 30 or 40,000 albums, and I have to tell you, it's my favorite album of all time, actually.
Oh, lovely. Mine too. That's very, very nice of you to say that. Thank you very much.
I've probably listened to it about 400 or 500 times in my life. So I'm curious how, I have friends who are musicians who look at that album and marvel at it, and they can't understand if something that complex was put together before Pro Tools or Logic. What kind of...
Oh, hand played as well. It was amazing. Actually, what I used to do, we had a very primitive sampler, sequencer sampler. What was it called? It was a precursor to people who invented Notator, I think it was called, which is now Apple Logic. I had this Notator which ran on this primitive PC called an Amiga, and I would come in the morning and I'd just, plot something out in like skeleton form on that, and I'd put that onto the multi-track, and I'd say to Tom, okay, we're going to work on that, and then that's the little sketch, and everything on top of that was hand played. There was no synths, there was nothing, and then we just threw away the sketch. So that was the technique of working on it, and I do remember there's an amazing acoustic guitar section at the beginning of Amarok. I forgot what we called it. It's in no time signature. I just felt nice to play it. I was once at a jam session in LA, and there was Stuart Copeland from Police. There was the guy from what was his name, from the Traveling Wilburys, and Mr. Blue Sky, what's his name?
Blue Sky?
What's the name of the band that made Mr. Blue Sky?
ELO?
ELO, yeah.
Oh, Jeff Lynne, yeah.
He was there. And Tom Newman was attempting to play guitar and sing vocals, and I started playing this acoustic guitar on electric guitar from Amarok, and then I had Jeff Lynne and Stuart Copeland kind of jamming along to that. It was really quite extraordinary because it's not really in any time signature. There's no one anywhere. It's just But I tell you, one of the ways I got that was from we were on tour, one of many tours, and we ended up in Athens, and we went to the local market there, and I was with Maurice Pert, who's an extraordinary rhythmical person. We started jamming with some of the local Greek musicians. They don't play in any time, are there? There's no 1, 2, 3, 4. We were playing along with them, and it was, I can't remember what I was playing, maybe acoustic guitar or bouzouki, I think, because I can play a bit of bouzouki, because it's like a big mandolin. We were enthralled by these, lack of structure, lack of rhythm. It was just notes just flying around in. It wasn't random order. It had a logic to it, but it defied logic, the logic of that music, and that's something that little piece of Amarok, I suppose, tried to capture.
So I have to ask you, when you handed the finished master into Virgin, how did they react to it?
They said, it's Tubular Bells 2. And I said, no, it's not. I'm going to think of a title for it. One of the first things that came into my mind was I had a Celtic English dictionary, and it came up the word for Ommadawn was idiot, you see, and I found this word, it was changeling. title of my book. And Amarok is changeling in Gaelic. And that to me sounded like Amarok, so I spelt it out. And on the cover, that's actually hand-carved in metal by Tom Newman. He got these lumps of metal and he cut them and filed them and made them out. They were outraged, my record company, that I wouldn't call it Tubular Bells 2, because it wasn't Tubular Bells 2. It was Ommadawn 2, if anything. But Ommadawn 2 doesn't sound good. It sounds like, doesn't right. So Amarok it became, and they refused to promote it. So I had to promote it myself. I hired my own, radio plugger. We had a first listening at my studio near London. We put all the chairs out, got a caterer, got all the, the sandwiches, some champagne, blah, blah, blah. And one person came out, that was Bob Harris from Radio 1. Do you remember Bob Harris?
I do, of course.
Yeah, he was the only one that came.
Really?
Yeah, we got one person there. He loved it. He played it on his show, but if I'd have called it Tubular Bells 2, the place would have been packed. Unbelievable that, just not calling it the right thing. So it was tragic, really, and it, didn't sell hardly anything. I don't even think it charted or anything. Tragedy, really. But I'll tell you one good thing. I often get people saying it's their favorite album. It's my favorite album, and you just said it. So what the hell? It's going to stand the test of time. I think if in 100 years that's known as my best work, then no problem.
What will you do when you reissue it? You said you're going to do a 5.1 mix. Anything else?
Yeah, beautiful. No, just 5.1. There isn't like a demo of it or anything. There was only the first shot.
Well, my last question about Amarok. What was the fallout from the Morse code bit?
Well, I didn't tell anybody about it for about a year afterwards. I was hoping, with all the clever people in the world, that somebody might listen to it and think, that sounds like Morse code, but nobody did. So it was like my little gesture of defiance went unnoticed, and so I was feeling, well, I better tell somebody about it, otherwise nobody will ever find, the hidden message in Amarok. And if I hadn't opened my mouth, it probably still nobody would have noticed. And people still can't find it, mostly.
So there was no father. Branson didn't freak out or anything?
No. I get on well with him now. It's all right. It's kind of a funny. It's not like rude. It's quite elegant side of my, dissatisfaction at the time. It's not like really nasty. I think he once said to me, I heard something about there's a Morse code message. And I said, yeah, oh, so it's there.
Well, so I've got two more historical questions, and I just want to talk about some future projects after that. Right after Amarok, there was another unique album in your discography, Heaven's Open, which was shrouded in mystery. I don't recall you doing. Yeah, you weren't doing any interviews.
That was another turkey. Yeah, it was me deciding to be a rock singer, which wasn't very successful. I even hired a real good singing teacher. I spent 6 months with this extremely large, bossy lady. It's making me do all these vocal exercises, E-R, U-R, all this kind of stuff. I worked very, very hard at it. But I did get one nice feedback from that. And I like to go skiing, I was in place in Switzerland called Villars, which is near Lake Geneva. And somebody introduced me to the racing driver, Jacques Villeneuve, who'd just won the Formula One title. And he said that was his favorite song, the track Heaven's Open. And I can just imagine him, sitting there on the grid, thinking of, this is that moment, it's waiting for you. Okay, well, I inspired a young guy to, win the World Championship Formula One. Well, that's not too bad, is it? So it was kind of worthwhile in a way.
And you called yourself Michael Oldfield, one time only. Why?
Why not? Why not? Felt like it.
It wasn't an act of defiance.
No.
No?
No. Well, I thought, well, perhaps because I'm singing, I ought to be slightly different or something like that. I can't remember. Perhaps I had some logic at the time.
Well, how do you look back at the album? Do you think it holds up?
That track is pretty good. We were running into trouble with that, and Tom was quite friendly with Dave Gilmour. There was this little pub in west of London where people would just turn up and jam, and I went there, just jammed a few times, and then David Gilmour was there, and he very kindly offered to come out and listen to the track and help us out a bit, and he made some subtle difference. He was I think he got a credit as a co-producer on that track, but there's a lot of those tracks. I think when it comes around to remixing it, I'll probably just remix a couple. You see, because there's no contractual obligation for me to remix everything. So I've just kind of been picking and choosing. I'm going to remix all of 5 Miles Out and probably all of Crises. But after that, there's probably going to be a bit of a lull until we get to Amarok.
Okay, well, I just have one more historical question, and then I want to talk to you about your rock album. But another mystery album that never came out was the Orchestral Hergest Ridge. And why was that orchestral version never released?
I didn't like either of the orchestral Tubular Bells or orchestral Hergest Ridge, and the reason they came to exist was because after the first Tubular Bells concert, the Queen Elizabeth Hall. Oh, I have to tell you, when we went to the Olympics, the hotel was on the embankment near the Queen Elizabeth Hall, and I borrowed somebody's bicycle, so every morning I would go up and down, and I would stand outside the stage door to the Queen Elizabeth Hall, and I would remember 40 years ago going in there, shaking like a leaf, thinking this is my first ever concert on my own. It was quite nice to meet my old self. But after that one concert, I was so horrified of the difficulties of reproducing my albums that I didn't want to go on tour. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't go on tour until 1978, which was 5 years later. And it was Richard Branson, well, if you won't go on tour, I'm going to make an orchestral version of it and get orchestras to play it. That was his plan. So he hired David Bedford, who did a very good job. It was never meant to be orchestral. It was never meant to be. I made one orchestral album called Music of the Spheres, but that was designed to be like that. So I didn't approve of those tracks, and I don't. I've heard a couple of good versions. There was one Japanese one somebody posted on YouTube, and it sounds okay. And if it was going to be orchestrated, then I would have been involved. But David did it entirely on his own, although I did just play a bit of guitar, I think, on one track.
Really? That Orchestral Hergest Ridge album had nothing to do with you then? I didn't know that. Not
a bean, nothing. I wasn't involved at all.
Very interesting. Well, you're currently making a rock album that you consider very personal. You're calling it Music Straight from the Heart. What can you tell me about this album?
To be honest, just since I got these new batch of multi-tracks, the 5 Miles Out, and I'm getting Crises any day now. It's not exactly on the back shelf, but it's on the shelf. I just want to concentrate on doing the best I can. But I've made all these songs. I'm trying to sing them myself. My voice is kind of, how do you describe it? My voice on Heaven's Open, yeah? Mm-hmm. Well, you imagine a sort of, when did I make that? 20 years older version of that voice. So it's kind of just barely hangs together, So I've been looking. It all depends if we can find the right singer, how good it's going to be, Nothing wrong with the tracks, and we plan to re-record the backing tracks live with a proper rock band and get some really good session musicians, in much the same way as I work with all these guys on Platinum, and live sessions are totally different than playing everything yourself. So it all depends. You have to do some research, listen to a lot of people, get lucky, find a real good vocalist who can not just sing it, they've got to enter into my emotions, the way I felt about the song. And it's going to be, either get lucky and we'll find the right people straight away, or it's going to drag on for a year or so. But right now, I just have to put a little bit of a bubble around me and think, well, I'm doing this remix now, because these two albums are very special. They kind of mark the best of the midpoint of my career, if you think. See what I like, and they, long after I'm gone, they're still going to be there, and I've got this opportunity to, really present them as well as I can.
And when you call a new rock album, whenever it comes out, music straight from the heart.
No. A lot of the songs are pretty miserable, actually.
Okay.
I was toying with the title of "Man on the Rocks," but that's the title of one of the songs. But there's one song which is really, really great, because where I live in Nassau, right on the water, and they go out a lot on various boats. And because obviously it's Bahamas, and the sea is beautiful, so I wrote a song about sailing. It's not really like the Rod Stewart sailing. It's more of a tongue-in-cheek, shake off all the shackles of the modern world and just get out there on the ocean. It's quite funny. A bit Pirates of the Caribbean. I can see Johnny Depp on the front of a boat singing it, pirate ship, just like that. That's a happy song, but the rest of it is quite miserable, but very powerful. And I love playing the guitar on it. But somehow the guitar sound has improved. The guitar at the end of Ommadawn, Part 1, the real screaming one.
Mm-hmm.
I got this box. It's actually made by Avid, called 11. And you just plug the guitar in and press a button, and it sounds exactly like the Gibson SG going through the Fender twin reverb with the right speakers, and so that's fun. Just like I said, it's just I'm not really in that frame to talk about that, and it's all very new. But I did meet up with Steve Lipson, who's worked a lot with Trevor Horn, and Trevor Horn I worked with. Loved working with Trevor. I met Steve. He came over, and I think we're going to get on well. So that'll be nice.
You were talking about your guitar work. Talk to me about your relationship with the guitar after all of these years, as your faithful musical companion.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just part of me. It's like part of my body. It's like an extra limb. I don't have to think about it. I just pick it up and play. It's because I learned so young to play. I got all my technique, before I was even a teenager, around 10, 11. So I don't have to work anything out. Just pick it up, and it's like a voice. It's as natural as talking. The sound is very important, and the guitars as well. Some guitars are good. They don't work. You have to get a lucky one, and be careful not to lose it. And then they age as well. Sometimes they're great for a few years, and then they gradually not so great, and then you don't want to play them anymore. And I've got just a very boring Fender Telecaster at the moment. It doesn't look special at all, but it's just nice to play it at the moment. I don't know. I was contacted by PRS England, because they saw I played a PRS at the Olympics. It's really just very pretty to look at. It's my actual guitar I use in the studio is a real ugly thing.
Well, you have one of the most immediately recognizable guitar tones in history.
Thank you.
How do you? And I haven't really heard it. I haven't heard that sound reproduced by anyone but you. Is there any insight you can give me into how you get that tone these days?
I think it comes from the way I learned, which is finger picking on acoustic, and it's a very pure sound because I play with my fingernails, and any string that's not being actually sounding is I dampen the other strings with my other fingers. So whereas most guitarists would play with a plectrum, and the other strings are kind of ringing a bit and kind of messing up the purity of the sound, because with a plectrum you can't dampen the other strings. And I think that's the secret of it. And also I use a violinist vibrato rather than the rock guitarist vibrato. My vibrato is from side to side, where the rock guitarist is up and down. And it's a mixture of that, and I use a very Celtic style, lots of little grace notes, like on the bagpipes, lots of little dion, boom, dion. And tremendous power and emotion goes into any note. I can play one note, or just three notes, with such passion and conviction and authority, if you like. I don't have to impress by playing very fast. I can play just something very simple or not. It's a combination of that, and I have to have the right sound. And I used to use all kinds of strange, weird boxes to get that sound. I even one point bought the very original Manor desk. There's a chap now called Richard Barry, richardbarry.com. He's got what's left of it. He's thinking about rebuilding it. The very original Manor desk, I got two of the modules from it, and I used them as part of my guitar rig. But now, luckily, I've got everything in one simple box, so it's plug and go.
Which is the simple box?
It's called 11.
Oh, 11, it's that box. Okay, got it. I understand.
Yeah.
Is the guitar still the way you primarily write music, through the guitar?
No, I never wrote music with a guitar. Don't really. Tubular bells are mostly written on either my grandmother's upright piano, a real honky-tonk thing, or electric organ, a bit of it on guitar, I suppose. But it's written without an instrument, really. In fact, it's not even written. It's like the idea arrives in my head and I hear it. So it makes me feel more like a messenger than a performer or composer. I can receive ideas. There's somewhere deep in my subconscious they're conceived and grow into embryos and then pop out into my consciousness. I don't know what it is. It's not like the times when I sit down and try and compose are, the worst times. In fact, I can't do that. I have to. Sometimes I wait for months, even years, for a good idea.
So when those ideas do come into your head, how do you capture them then?
If I'm not at my studio, I have to write them down. I'm one of these terrible, sinning, nasty, horrible smokers, and I roll my own cigarettes with tobacco. With them, I have these rolling papers, and there's a little space on the top of the rolling paper where it's just big enough to write a little stave and enough to write a few notes of music. If I even write, say, 5 or 6 notes of the idea, then I'll always remember it. If I don't write it down, after an hour or so, it's gone forever. So there was a time I used to have a big, like a coffee jar, full of little bits of Rizzler papers, all the different ideas. When it came to album time, I emptied them out and listened to them all, because they're very precious. They're the very precious musical ideas. I remember Mount Tady came like that. Mount Tady is a volcano on the Canary Islands, which I climbed up to the top of. And
that's Very, very interesting. You mentioned that music just emerges and just appears out of nowhere in your head. Is there a spiritual element to that consideration for you?
I think there is, yes. But, we could talk for hours about that, but I prefer try not to analyze it and just accept it. It's a blessing, really. Who knows where they come from? Because music's only this musical scale is so simple. It's only 13 notes, and there's only so many combinations of them. So, but along with the melody is something else that comes with it, almost like a spiritual component. So you can have the same notes, but it would be a totally different piece of music depending on the spiritual component of those surrounding those notes. But we get into a very theoretical area now, which I tend not to think about. I just go, well, I'm just lucky.
Do you have any sort of belief system, or is it more open-ended for you?
Well, I used to theorize a lot and read a lot, but a few years ago I learned transcendental meditation. It's TM, it's called. And when I'm able to, have the time, I like to, because I live by the water, and I've got a little dock here, and I've got a little boat, I've got a jet ski as well. And it's a nice day, the sea's not too calm, I take the jet ski out probably all on my own. I go out to one of these little islands around Nassau and just plop myself down there and, swim into the beach, and I'll sit there for an hour maybe, and do a bit of meditation. When you're in that deep meditative state, you don't need answers. There's no such. You're just there. That's all it feels like. And words seem, just kind of blabbering noises. A very primitive way of communicating. That's all I can say, really. You don't need to theorize or.
I was wondering if you've ever considered that, because of the money you originally generated for Virgin, that we now have Richard Branson engaging in Virgin Galactic. So in a way, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have commercial space tourism starting at this level. Have you ever thought about that?
Well, I think you read my book. Yeah?
I have, yes.
I did put a picture of the spaceship there, and sometimes it did occur to me once that that the only purpose of my music, it might have been, is to launch Richard. But then I thought, well, hang on, that's not being very fair to yourself. There's a part of a very big plan here. But Richard is an extraordinary person, and to get this commercial space flight happening, he started it off really. But he might not finish it off. I hear there's talk of putting a couple into orbit around Mars. I think in a couple of years. And then there's Elon Musk, with his rockets that they're doing. But Richard, I think, first brought the idea of commercial spaceflight to the public consciousness, but. Whether he'll be the most successful, I know Richard will give it his all, but there might be other people who do it. And then there's people who go to space, like the the private space travelers. I read recently that the guy from the Cirque du Soleil, he went up there, didn't he? And people who've got enough money can go up, but Richard will make it more affordable. But it's still a couple of $100,000, so it's not like everybody can do it. But perhaps in 20 years it'll be affordable for many people. We've got to go out that way. We've got to go to the stars.
Now, you pretty much explored every universe of music imaginable at some point in your music. Is there anything left that you hope to do with it, or anything you haven't explored that you hope to get to at some point?
Well, I was talking about this deep meditative state. There's nothing there. There's total silence. But in some strange way, there is the most beautiful music imaginable, which is nothing, no music, but it's still music. That probably sounds like a good way to finish off the piece.
And when you say no music, I mean, are you being literal when you say no music?
Yeah, no music. It's just, I suppose I'm thinking along the lines of, ultimate human evolution, which is Arthur C. Clarke's idea, which, I did an album of his book, which is the concept of 2001. We gradually replace all our physical parts until we're totally mechanical. And then at some point there becomes a break where we realize we don't even need the mechanical, the artificial, and we can exist without anything. So in a way I'm sort of saying that music is like a carrier of something, and eventually we won't even need the physical sound waves.
And do you see that manifesting itself somehow in what you do, or how you might approach something?
Didn't John Lennon do a silent album? I think he did, a silent track. Somebody did, anyway.
Sure.
My next album, Silence. Yeah. not sure what my record company will think about it.
So how did it feel to do an interview in which the interviewer did not mention Tubular Bells to you?
Oh my God, yes. Unbelievable. That's the first time. Excellent. And normally the first question is, why did you write Tubular Bells? And that's when I kind of crawl underneath my desk. And there was no reason. But no, excellent. We did an excellent interview with no mention of Tubular Bells. Fantastic.
I thought you might enjoy that.
Excellent, thank you.
Well,
It's been a pleasure to talk to you.